But if I can come to a place of peace and knowing that regardless of the body that I'm in, regardless of the life experiences that I'm having, I am still worthy. I am still worthy of being on this planet. I'm still worthy of having a good, divine, juicy life. Then that brings me back into connection with myself.
Welcome to another episode of the Preparing for Pregnancy After Loss podcast. This is your host, Natalie Facey, and it gives me just so much pleasure and so much joy and gratitude to be able to connect with you in this way. This week's episode is actually a recording of an Instagram live that I did in mid-September. I was really feeling the guidance around sharing that we're here to birth many things, and those things could be tiny humans, and they can be this creative expression where we are in collaboration with life. And so I expand on that a lot in this episode, and I speak at length about the fact that regardless of what's happening in the pregnancy journey, we are worthy just the same. So if that's something that you're struggling with, definitely check out this episode, because I do a deep dive over and over again on that one point. One of the things that I also really like about this episode is the collaborative nature in having people share their comments live and having people share their questions live. There's one person who came on later in the conversation who had a question around reclaiming her womb. It's standing in her agency, standing in her yes, standing in her no, and what that's like if there has been some experience in the past around feeling pressure to do something that was not a full yes for her. So what does it look like to go back to that space of reclamation? All right, so without further ado, here's today's episode.
I'll share what's been on my heart in terms of the beings who we are and being able to birth many things. If you're feeling called to offer a question, or if you're feeling called to come in on screen and offering a question, the space will be here for that. And we'll probably be together for 30 minutes, depending on how the flow is. It could be 45 minutes. It could be up to an hour, but really trusting the energy that's here and allowing ourselves to go with that. I was having a conversation with a mentor, and out of that conversation was really this idea that we humans are meant to birth many things. If you know about me and about my journey and the work that I do, it's around pregnancy loss, pregnancy support, fertility support. Some of the threads within that feel really important to me is the fact that regardless of what someone's pregnancy journey has been, it does not disconnect them from their sense of worth. It does not disconnect them from who they are, right? Regardless of whether or not someone has children, chooses to have children, wants to have children, and has challenges around that pregnancy journey, their sense of worth, their worthiness is never in question. And so I always feel called to that thread, right? No matter what you went through, that doesn't change the precious being who you are. So in that sense, I tend to show up as a rebel, because what we're taught in society, like the overculture message that we continue to be taught, that continues to be reinforced, is that different bodies are meant to operate in certain ways and do certain things. And for women, people in these femme bodies, the dictation or the expectation is that we're having children. I want to shift that narrative, or at least bring awareness to the fact that we're holding that narrative, and having children is beautiful, but that isn't the thing that defines our worth, right? We're worthy regardless of where we are on that pregnancy journey. And so going back to that conversation with one of my mentors, where she said, you are meant to birth many things. I am meant to birth many things. And all of us are meant to birth many things. Like, as humans, we are these creative beings. And so really that expanded my world, so that I wasn't just focused on one of the possibilities for birthing, which is like having physical babies, to oh my gosh, I get to birth so many things. Like my world really gets to expand so that I get to create all of these things on the earth, right? What I think of creation, what I think of the birthing process is allowing for something to flow through me, right? So even as I'm sharing this message that has felt like so alive in my system for maybe about the past 2 weeks, like this feels like a birth because it gets to move through me. It was coming through. I held it in my body. I was feeling it, tasting it, vibing on it, thinking about it, and now I get to express it in the world. And that for me feels like the creative process. Different things can be created by humans in these creative bodies. It could be a business, it could be some healing practice, it could be working with herbs and flowers, it could be using your mind to offer creative solutions for people, it could be working with your hands and building houses or whatever. As humans, we are creative beings. And again, what we're taught is very, very different, that we fall into these categories of, oh, this is how you're meant to operate in the world based on who you are, your background, the kind of body that you live in. And so for women and people in femme bodies, the default is having a baby, right? The default is having a baby. And when I say that it's the default, I'll break that down a little bit. That is the bare minimum expectation. At least you should have that thing happen in your life. And if that doesn't happen, then there are these layers of shame that we hold in our bodies because we haven't done the thing that we're told that our bodies are supposed to do. And that's super, super interesting because I've had conversations with people they're on their pregnancy journey, they've been having challenges, and this is something that I've said myself. It's like the one thing that my body is supposed to know to do, I didn't do it, right? The one thing that I was created to do, I didn't do it. And so if you don't do that one thing that you've been created to do, there's this sense of, oh shit, if you couldn't even do that, then what can you do? If that isn't going well, then what purpose do you serve on the earth? And having that come out of my mouth, it sounds like a curse word because no, regardless of what the pregnancy journey has been, your beingness on the earth, you being on the earth, you're meant to have that experience. You're worthy of being on the earth regardless of what the pregnancy journey has been. I'm feeling a little bit of fire and I know that I'm going to start going off track from what I said I would talk about, so I'm going to go back to that. So essentially, not falling into that default of, okay, at least you should be having a baby, can then lead to layers of shame and guilt and not feeling as though we are worthy of being on the planet, not feeling as though we're worthy of being respected, worrying about the status of our relationship, worrying about family members, if they'll think of us in a positive light, and if we'll lose relationships with in-laws and other people in our family because there are challenges on the pregnancy journey. I'm wanting to bring all of that to light because a lot of times it's like the belief that's operating under our thoughts and under our fears, but it isn't always clear. That's the belief that we're holding, and it isn't always clear where that belief comes from. Because a lot of times it's what we're taught by society and it isn't what's true. And that creates disconnection within our bodies, and it creates disconnection in the relationship with ourselves. How I would describe or define connection with myself is, do I feel a sense of oneness within myself? Do I feel a sense of peace within myself? So being connected with myself, staying in connection with myself is, am I within myself experiencing a sense of oneness? Disconnection from myself is there some story that I'm holding? Is there some story that I'm holding about who I need to be some story that I have been taught outside of myself that I'm now holding in my body because I'm not being that thing, or because I'm not living into that story fully. Then there isn't a sense of peace with myself. There is this separation between this story and who I am, or this story and who I am being. Really wanting to name that a lot of times when there is this sense of lack of peace, there is this inner turmoil, there is this lack of rest and ease in the body, it's often some story that we're told about who we need to become that we're not living into. And then that creates this need or this desire to go out and prove in the world that you can be that. So if I am a person in this body that we call woman, or if I'm a person in a femme body and the expectation is that I do this thing but I'm not doing it, if I am holding both of those things and that separation in my system, then that causes disconnection. But if I can come to a place of peace and knowing that regardless of the body that I'm in, regardless of the life experiences that I'm having, I am still worthy. I am still worthy of being on this planet. I'm still worthy of having a good, divine, juicy life. Then that brings me back into connection with myself. If for me, the things that feel true to me, the things that really call my spirit and the things that really bring me alive, if that's the life that I am living into, then I can stay in connection with myself. And when the story that I keep hearing from the overculture is different from the life that feels true for me, from the life that I'm living, if I bring that story in, it causes that gap, that disconnection. But if I leave that story outside and recognize that this is someone else's story, someone else's framework of the world, and a really oppressive framework of the world, then I can continue to experience this space of internal harmony and this space of inner peace. Okay, so I'm going to pause for now because I see that there is a comment in the chat. So Censored Reality says, this is timely, as certainly I am understanding that the womb isn't physical, and I started to think about all of the births spiritually. Which there can also be loss in that realm as well. Like, snaps for that. That is so true. That's so true. Let's see if it's the next thing on my list. It's not the next thing, but it's definitely there. The womb is a creative center, right? The womb is a creative center. And I mentioned earlier that this thing was coming in, this very same thing that I'm sharing now, it was coming through, it was coming. And I held it in my body. I was holding that in my womb center. I was holding that in my heart center. I was holding that knowing something about this feels alive and juicy for me, and something about this feels like something that I want to share with others, and maybe it will be of value for others. And then the birthing gets to happen. We are literally in the creation process as you're receiving the thing that I was holding and gestating within my body. And so how cool would it be for us to normalize the birthing process as not something that only happens with tiny humans? That isn't just something that is physical, but something that also happens on the spiritual realm. So thank you, Censored Reality, for adding that. Really, really appreciating your perspective on that as well. All right. Let's see what else was here. Yeah, so we talked about the layer of shame. My intention in this conversation is to essentially begin to lift that layer of shame by adding more clarity around where these stories come from, how they can live in our bodies, and how they impact how we move in the world and how we perceive ourselves in the world as being worthy or not worthy. So the next thing, was going to be about the wombs and the fact that our bodies are meant to create. Our bodies are meant to create. And I'm so appreciating what you shared, Censored Reality, around the fact that there can also be a loss in other things that we're meant to birth and don't birth, right? I see that as almost this like ongoing loss of, there's this desire to bring something out into the world, and maybe there's a lack of resources, right? Not having the money, the support, not having enough information, or maybe there's fear. right? Like feeling as though you're moving through it alone and wanting more support, or not having clarity as to how to move towards doing the thing. I think the main thing that I've seen and experienced within myself is the fear. And there is that sense of loss when those things don't happen, right? The book that you wanted to write, or the podcast that you wanted to start, or the business that you wanted to start, or some idea that you had that you didn't get to express, that didn't get to be birthed in the world. And yes, there's definitely a loss with that as well. The other thing that I'm wanting to touch on is that there are people who either they choose not to have children, or there might be challenges in having children. Some of what I'm sharing right now is intertwined in how they might respond. It's okay, I'm having trouble having a baby. I believe in this idea that the greatest thing that a woman can do on this planet, or the most important thing that a woman is meant to do, this isn't true. This is the story that I'm reflecting, that we're taught. But the most important thing that a woman is meant to do on this planet is to have children. Because there is some blockage in that realm, and it's challenging for that to happen. Or because I actually don't want to have children. That's also a possibility. So because I don't fit the story that I'm being told, instead I'm going to create something. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to dedicate my life to this kind of work. I'm going to make that other thing the baby. And that's also problematic. It can feel empowering, but it could also be problematic because firstly, we're accepting the story that in order to be worthy, there is this thing that we need to create, right? Can't create the baby, don't want to create the baby, so I'm going to funnel my energy into creating this other thing. The mere fact that we accept that story, that's where the problem also enters into the room, because the story to begin with isn't true. Your worthiness, nothing challenges your worthiness. There's nothing that you need to do outside of yourself to show someone else that you are worthy. There's nothing that you need to do outside of yourself to show someone else that you're worthy of love and recognition and support and kindness and respect. Like all of those things are given, right? In our human beingness on this planet, like those things, we came with those things, right? And I'm trying to remember if I have experienced that. Maybe I have experienced that, and I definitely see it. It's like we start to send our energy into, okay, can't do that thing, can't do the baby thing, but let's make this the baby. Let's birth this other thing instead. And I want to be very clear that there's nothing wrong with the birthing of the other thing, but when it gets tangled up with our sense of worth, that's the challenge, right? Because it means that our sense of fulfillment, our sense of remaining in connection with ourselves, our sense of knowing that we are worthy of love and being in that place of love with ourselves and accepting love from others, it becomes tied into the thing outside of ourselves that we have convinced ourselves that we need to do. Right? And so if the business isn't working, if some part of that creation isn't going well, then we go back to that place of disconnection. It's similar to the loss that one would associate with a baby, even though it would be different, but it's going back to this place of, oh shit, I'm still not worthy. I'm still not doing the things that would lead to acknowledgement and recognition and this sense of feeling worthy. Yeah, I wanted to share that. If there are any questions that are coming up, please feel free to put that in the chat. Any comments, any parts of this that resonates with your experience, feel free to put that in the chat. If it feels like it resonates, feel free to put a thumbs up in the chat. I saw a couple of hearts. That means that it resonates for at least one person. But definitely feel free to share as we're moving along. Yeah, so I would say don't make the business your baby. The business is this thing that you get to enjoy and it gets to be your creation in the world, but don't attach it to your sense of worth. Nothing needs to be attached to your sense of worth because you're already worthy. That's not a question. I started sharing before about what I think of the birthing process. And essentially, I think of it as being in flow. All right, thank you for the hearts. Definitely glad to hear that some of this is resonating. Yeah, so I think of the birthing process as being in flow. And this is how I experience the world. And it doesn't have to be the same for everyone else. And if it's different for you, like I 100% want to hear it, because then I get to learn something that's different, right? I'm going to pause and see what Silver Beautiful Light has to say. Absolutely resonates. Thank you. We're worthy simply because we are. Ashe. We are worthy simply because we are. Yes. So I think of my body as a channel or a vessel for creative life force energy, right? The fact that I am breathing, there's life force energy moving through me. The fact that my voice is expressing itself, the fact that I am coming up with words that match this feeling inside of me, that is life force energy flowing through me and out. The fact that I have desires that I might take some action to try to manifest those things, that is life force energy moving through me. And there are times when there's something that's coming that feels like it's outside of me, and I would say that I call that energy spirit. And all the things that are like, well, some things in the seen world, but all the things in the non-seen world, I call that spirit, right? So my connection to my ancestors, I would call the ancestors an expression of spirit. Nature that's around me, like for me, nature has a spirit or an energy. My guides, I refer to my guides as spirit. And so sometimes there is some other energy that isn't me that's wanting to move through me. And I'm not talking about evil spirit, because I realize that I've used the word spirit and then people are like, what do you mean by spirit? So nothing evil or negative, but it's like some beautiful creative flow that's wanting to move through me. So sometimes when things are coming, I know that they're not mine. I know that I'm simply the vessel. Many of my podcast episodes, they're not things that I thought up. There are things that I was listening to, that I was hearing, and I allowed myself to become the vessel to share that. So essentially, I become a part of the birthing process. And we could also connect that to babies coming in. We're not making these babies. Like, we are a part of the creation, but it's life force energy that's coming through, and it comes through us, right? It comes through us in the way that it can. And if there are challenges to that, then we can see how we can support that. I definitely think of it as the birthing is something wanting to come through, either something that is arising within me or something that I'm listening to and allowing to flow through me. All right, I'm going to pause because I see a question. How do you distinguish the difference? Tell me more about what you mean, the difference between what? I want to make sure that I'm answering exactly what's coming up for you. All right, so yeah, for me, the birthing process is allowing for something, that energy to flow through me. And it means that I'm giving birth many times per week. If I have the spaciousness and capacity, like many things are coming through all the time, right? So I really want to normalize this process of having things flow through us. Like there's birthing of humans, and there are the other ways that as the beings that we are in these bodies, we get to birth other things. All right, Censored Reality says, when you know it's something wanting to flow through you, or when it's just you? Ah, gotcha. Let's see. When it's just me, that is such a good question, because a lot of times it feels collaborative. How I would answer that is, there are times when like I have excitement about doing something, like I might see something in the world and it inspires me, and it feels like within myself I'm having the desire to be a part of that or contribute to that. So I might hear a song and I might be inspired to learn the song, and I might play the song in my shower and I keep singing it. So for me, that's like a creative process that it feels like I initiated. And then there are other times when things start coming that I didn't really start. It's like I'm hearing it and I decide, okay, this is interesting and I want to be in this collaborative process with this energy that's coming through. This, I would say, like this specific conversation about birthing many things, this is one of those things, right? I had that conversation with my mentor at least a year and a half ago, or it might have been 2 years. And I held on to it. It was inspiring for me. And then it came back. So I wasn't digging into my memory to figure out like, oh, like what's the thing I want to talk about? I think when I woke up one morning, it just came back. So I would say when I'm seeking, I'm inspired by something and I begin seeking, like I know that I'm initiating some birthing process. And then when something else wants me to collaborate with birthing something through me, it usually just comes out of nowhere. So I would say that helps me to distinguish it. Let me know if that's helpful for your question. And if you have a follow-up question. All right, so I talked about this birthing process being this flow, allowing for energy to flow through us in the different ways that we want it to flow through us. And I'll share one example about something that is like in the gestation period for me, and I don't know what it will become. And this definitely feels like a collaboration because I had this idea and I'm convinced that it's my idea, but who knows, right? It might be from spirit or from some energies around. So I've been having conversations with different clients, and what has been coming up is if you're someone who's highly sensitive, if you're someone who is a deep sensor, meaning like you're sensing a lot that's happening in the environment, or if you're someone who's an empath, how do you protect your energy so that things don't feel as overwhelming? That has been coming up over and over again in conversations for about the past 2 weeks. So eventually I was like, all right, maybe I could do some kind of recorded series on this. And so it's like the birthing process started, right? And as I'm in the middle of the day just doing things like washing dishes, or as I'm waking up in the morning, there are ideas that are coming to me and through me. And some of them I feel like, okay, I'm thinking through this and there is some thought that's emerging as the answer. And some of them, they're not from me. I know that I didn't think about them. I know that they're not coming from me. But there is this, maybe it's my guides, there is this benevolent energy that wants this information to be available to people that I am in collaboration with. So the gestation and the growth is happening. And I've definitely gotten to points of like, all right, I want this to be 12 recordings, right? I've started to impose myself and give it form, starting to define it and decide what it's going to be. And what I'm feeling intuitively is you actually don't know what it's going to be. And isn't that, I think that's so connected to the birthing process, because you know that something is growing. You know that you want to get to some end point, and you don't know what that outcome will look like, right? And so what I've been doing is just like collecting notes, and as different things come up, I keep writing them down. And my worry has been, oh, what if I just want this to be like this simple recording of 12 things, but I'm feeling that this needs to be something else like a book, right? What if, as collaborators, Natalie, I want this to be quick and easy, boom, boom. I spend an hour or two recording these 12 things, and this other energy that I'm collaborating with is, nah, girl, we're going to write a book. So the fear that comes up for me is, oh, like, how much time do I have? How much energy do I have? What's my capacity? And so it gets to be this fluid conversation that's happening. I hope that makes sense. If you have questions on that, let me know. But essentially what I'm saying is, in this gestation period, the body of work is growing. There is more information that's coming in, and the birthing into the world isn't ready yet, but I'm essentially collecting information. And when we get to that point of readiness, yes, this creation is meant to be out into the world, I will know. I will have that clarity. And I'll also have clarity as to what it needs to look like, even with the fear that, oh, I haven't written a book before. How do I know if I'll be able to do it? For me, it's really just trusting that this information feels clear. It feels like it's coming from a good place. It feels like it will be in service of the people who I've been chatting with, who need ways of supporting their energy and feeling balanced in the world when they're sensitive to a lot of energies around them. And so I'm going to keep working on this thing until it's ready to flow through. All right, so I'll pause there. And I see a question from Bridget, which says, would you be able to talk about resistance in the birthing process? Yes. Like when things aren't flowing because you're having resistance for whatever reason. Oh my gosh, yes. I can definitely talk about that because, yeah, lots of resistance happens in my mind. And I shared just now the example of, oh, I just want this thing to be quick and easy. But what if, and I'm already starting to sense it, right? I just want to quickly get to, let me finish this thing so that the people who need this support can have these tools as quickly as possible. I also have this thing about time. It's been a thing that I've been working with for as long as I've been conscious about myself. Like this idea that I don't have enough time. And I don't know where I'm running to, like what the thing is that I'm running off to, because I definitely have more than enough time. But it's this pattern that's in my system. You're running out of time. You don't have enough. So the idea of writing a book, it's like, where do I get that time? But there's time. If we do a little thing every day or several times per week for 30 minutes or an hour, there is enough time, right? So for me, that's the fear that comes up. And because of that fear, then that resistance would also come up. Sometimes the resistance is something we have conscious awareness of. And I appreciate that you're saying there's a resistance for whatever reason, because other times we actually don't know what that thing is. Other times it can be a trauma response and we haven't identified what was the injury, what was the wound that's leading to this trauma response. Other times it might just be patterns that we were raised with, things that we saw in our family of origin, things that we're taught through the media, things that we just see in our culture. Essentially, our culture teaches us rules like this, therefore that. You have this background, you have this amount of resources, whether it's money or connections or whatever. Therefore, the way gets to be open for you to create things. You have more access. So if we're taught that's the rules of how we operate in society, if we don't have the things, whether it's the money or the educational background or the connection or whatever, then we then adapt the story that we don't have access. We can't create those things, or we don't know enough, or we're not worthy. So for me, the resistance often comes down to fear. And so by identifying that there's resistance, that's really helpful information, because you can start to sit with, why is there resistance coming up for me? Can I learn more about what this resistance is? And can I not be what I'm calling violent with myself in learning nonviolent communication or compassionate communication? I've been learning that violence is trying to make someone do something that they don't want to do. So violence doesn't have to be physical. It can be verbal or emotional. But if we accept that definition, is that violence is trying to force someone to do something that they don't want to do, I don't want to then be violent with myself and force myself to do something. I want to really understand, why is there that blockage coming up for me, and can I gently move through that so that there is alignment as I am in that birthing process. All right, so I'll pause there. And then Bridget said, or maybe even resistance as it relates to needing to feel in control. That's also a big one. And I would say the desire for control, it's sometimes linked to a desire for certainty. It's, if I am in control, then the outcome will be what I want it to be. Sometimes it's also connected to capacity, right? Based on where I am in my life, based on the emotions that I'm holding. Hey, Queen Cherie, welcome. Based on where I am in my life, based on the emotions that I'm holding, based on the fullness of this experience that I'm having, it is not within capacity for something to go wrong. Like, shit can't be going wrong right now because too much has been going wrong and I am trying to hold it in. And so if I am going to collaborate with life and be a part of this creative process, it better work out. And I have said that, like, I've definitely started things and been like, I have no time for this to fail. Like, this better work out. And it's really feeling into or getting clarity around, this is the behavior, this is the response that I'm seeing come up for me. And what is it that I'm needing? Why this response is coming up? Because I do think that ultimately our nervous system, our bodies, want to protect us from the thing that it considers to be painful. And so how I want to respond to that is not to be judgmental. It's not to tell myself that I'm trying to control the situation. Not that you're doing that, Bridget, but to not be harsh or critical towards myself, but to really use it as an opportunity to understand myself even better. I have an accountability partner. I have 2 accountability partners actually, and Queen Sherry, who just joined, is one of them. And I shared with one of my accountability partners this week that I have this practice of being a student of my own life. I really want to be the observer. Oh, what's Natalie doing and why? What's coming up for Natalie? Why that's the way that she's responding, so that I'm not... like in school, we're forced to do things we don't want to do, or we're criticized, or we're rewarded for certain behaviors, and we lose rewards for other behaviors. And I don't want that kind of reward system. I want to just be kind to myself as a baseline. And so if there's resistance that's coming up, then I want to know, okay, maybe there's some fear here, because usually you're in flow, but there's something different about this that allows you to not be in flow. So can we learn more about that? And can we get the support that you're needing in order for the thing that you're wanting to birth to still be able to be birthed? So let me know if that answers your question, Bridget. If you want to give me a thumbs up, or if you have a follow-up, feel free to add that as well. Right, so we're talking about birthing and the fact that we are here to birth many things. And I mentioned that I'm currently in the birthing process of something. Okay, awesome. I'm glad that was helpful, Bridget. Currently in a birthing process, and my idea was that this is going to be a quick recording of 12 things, and there are going to be short recordings like 10 to 15 minutes, and getting the little nudge like, okay, this might be more, even if you don't want it to be more. I'm just trusting that as the information continues to come through, then my job for now is just writing down what's coming through, and I will have clarity as to what that wants to become. The other thing that was just coming up is that Therese Couture, who's the founder of Embodied Black Girl, she has been one of my teachers and mentors. And I've really learned from her that we get to be in collaboration with spirit, right? We get to be in collaboration with these energies that want to move through us. And so as I've thought of my healing practice, and I would say that I definitely came from this perspective of like, all right, like what makes sense from a business standpoint? What do I need to succeed? And looking out into the world that has like capitalism as its baseline, looking out into the world at what exists in the world and how I needed to mimic that in order to experience success. And in working with Therese and learning from Therese, like my perspective on success and my perspective on how I approach my healing practice has been so very different, in the sense that I keep listening to what's the thing that wants to be created. What's the thing that will be of service to other people? What's the thing that will be supportive for other people? Hey, Mariana, welcome. So good to see you. And how can I be in collaboration with that thing? So not like, all right, what are the offers? What are the packages? Which is where I started. And I'm also grateful for that, because that work opened my mind to the fact that I could run a business. And I stopped calling it business because it sounds like busyness, and I'm not trying to be busy. I'm trying to experience a lot of rest while I do this, and a lot of flow. And so in this other way of being, it's, oh, like, how can I just continue to be in tune with spirit? How can I continue to listen? Yeah, how can I continue to be in collaboration with spirit and allow for myself to be the vessel? And so when I'm recording podcast episodes, I ask, what do people need to hear? What needs to be said? As I'm thinking of whether it's these like recorded series or whatever it is that I'm creating, I am asking what needs to be expressed in the world, and is that in alignment with me, and how can I be in collaboration with that and be the vessel? Let's see, I want to go back to my notes. Yeah, so other things that might want to be birthed through you, it could be a business, or I have to find another word for business because I just don't like that it sounds like busyness. Some kind of practice or offering or thing. We'll find that word. If you find another word, let me know. Venture. Yes, I love venture. I love that. Yeah, that puts me in the mood, like the spirit of adventure. Yeah, let's go out in the world and create a thing. And it could be songs. It could be music. It could be dancing. And then the other one that I added here is like cooking at home. So it can be bigger things like, all right, like I want to start this venture. And it can be these smaller daily things like, I have the desire to make this cake. I have this desire to try this juice. I have this desire to sing this song. And can I allow for that to flow through me? Which means, can I allow for that to be birthed through me? Like we get to birth every single day, several times per week, or several times per day, by allowing for things to be expressed through our bodies and be made manifest into the world. It could be poetry. These words are being made manifest right now into the world. It could be art. And I keep going back to song, like I really love singing, and I'm not trying to be a professional singer. I could, but that doesn't speak to me in the way that the healing work that I'm doing right now speaks to me. I also want to call that out because where I started today was talking about the fact that as women or people in femme bodies, it's like the default is to have a baby, to birth another human. And the story that we tell ourselves is, until or unless I do that, then I haven't earned the right of being called a woman, or I am not worthy enough to be on this planet in a good way and to be in good relationships. And so the shift that tends to happen is we go out doing some other thing that we think will bring us that sense of worthiness. And sometimes it's dedicating our energy and our lives to a business, to some other thing that we pour out our energy into. And even for the things that we're good at, that we're not meant to spend as much time and energy on, we keep pushing that because of the belief that you have to do a thing to be considered as being worthy. So that was coming to mind as I was sharing about, I'm not trying to have some music album. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do a meditation album. But I'm not trying to make a music career the thing that I consider to be success. Success for me is, am I in flow? Am I listening? Am I in flow? Do I keep sharing what's wanting to come through? And am I listening to the thing and connecting to it in a way that feels really meaningful for me and that I believe will be meaningful for the people who I'm in connection with, like you right now in this moment? Right? So also wanted to name that sometimes because of this deep desire we have to be seen, to feel worthy, to feel accepted, to matter, to feel worthy of love, it can have us being disconnected with what's true within ourselves and trying to prove ourselves out in the world because of those needs that we're looking to meet. And what I'm wanting to say is nothing challenges your worthiness. I hope you hear that. Nothing separates you from being worthy, and nothing separates you from being worthy of all of those things that I just named. If you're in the hustle and the proving and the overwork because you're needing the recognition from someone else, firstly, how are ways that you can reconnect with your divine sense of worthiness? And secondly, maybe change the people that you're hanging out with. If you don't have a crew of people who are affirming you and loving you up and seeing you for who you are authentically, just change your crew to another crew. All right, I see a comment from Censored Reality. Man, there's a lot of connect the dots that are occurring for me right now. Thank you for sharing your insights, Nat. Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful that resonates with you. All right, so if you have questions, feel free to start adding them in the chat because we're coming to a close in a little bit. Yeah, and I have a note here about what it means to be disconnected from ourselves. I shared it earlier, but I'm feeling called to share it again because I know that there's some folks who joined afterwards. For me, being connected with myself means staying in alignment with who I am. Right? Like I know myself to be this kind of person. And maybe I'll add more specifics to that. I'm a person who likes nature. I'm a person who likes quiet. I'm a person who likes deep reflection and analysis and going into the insights. I am a person who likes song. I'm a person who likes movement in my body. If the world instead tells me that none of those things make me have an attractive personality, if the world instead tells me that those things mean that I am weird, or that those things mean that I am not interesting enough, if I believe that external story, that story from outside of myself that someone else created, if I take that in, if I make that my story, so it's in my body, it's in my framework of being in the world, if that exists while there is this deep desire for all the things that feel true for me, that's the disconnection. That's the separation between who I am, who I want to be, who I know myself to be, and the story that I have accepted, which is really someone else's story. So the disconnection is really the separation between myself and my beingness in the world, or the separation between my authentic self, me at my core, and who I am being in the world. Because if I take that story that, I'm like partially an introvert, and I say I'm 60% introvert, meaning I love connecting with people and I also love a lot of quiet time and a lot of nature time. If I'm told instead that's not okay and I need to be like out there and talking to people, and that it isn't okay to be quiet and sometimes shy, if I accept that it's not okay, it means that I am pushing beyond what feels authentic. Bridget says the same. Hey Drea, welcome. It means I'm pushing beyond what feels authentic and true, and I'm trying to match some image that some part of the culture is telling me that I need to be. That is disconnection. Because I'm no longer in alignment with my authentic self. I'm trying to align with something that isn't who I am. So that's what I would call the disconnection, is like this gap between who I am, like what's natural and easeful for me, and who I am told that I need to be. So going back to the story about women and femme-bodied people needing to have babies in order to be worthy, if I accept that as truth, then that disconnection lives within me every single day, because that is not my reality, right? I don't have children who are living with me right now. I mother a bunch of kiddos, like nieces and nephews and godchildren and children in the communities where I live. Like I am in the act of mothering when it's within capacity for me, but I don't have children with me now. So if I tell myself that as a woman I am not worthy and that I'm not woman enough, yeah, like even that, as I feel that in my body, like there's sadness that comes up if I were to have that living in my body. But instead, what my reality is, what creates connection and where I experience oneness in my body, is that I'm worthy regardless of what my pregnancy journey is. And that I can choose to continue being on this path of wanting to have children, or I can be at peace with maybe I don't want to have children, or maybe if it happens, it happens, right? But the thing that is never questioned in my body is whether or not I'm worthy, right? So I do not accept that story, reject that story about the worthiness and needing to have children to experience worthiness, and really holding this story that nothing questions my worthiness. Like I'm at the point where, that isn't a question for me. All right, so I've been talking a lot, and thank you for the hearts. I'm so grateful that this is resonating with you. But I want to pause to see if anyone has questions. If someone actually wants to jump on with me on screen, I welcome that. And if you have questions, I welcome seeing that in the chat as well. And in the meantime, while you're thinking about your questions or thinking about joining, I mentioned some of this earlier, but what I really want to close with is that some of the things that we're ultimately seeking is the desire to be loved. And these aren't really desires, they are needs, in the sense that these are required for us to thrive in our bodies on this planet, right? To be loved, to matter, to have a sense of belonging, right? Whether it's belonging within your family, within a group of friends, belonging to a cause, and having your unique expression in the world. Some others that I shared earlier were to be seen, to be witnessed. Ooh, this one's my favorite, to be known. Like I want to have relationships with people who really know me, who really know my heart, and who really know the core of who I am. And I feel so grateful that I have those relationships. And it's really making me think of this flip of, okay, I need to show something in the world in order to be seen, to be known, to be loved. And it makes me wonder, does it come down to having these relationships in which we can be seen and known and loved? Do I have to experience some external acknowledgement out into the world by doing a thing that other people see? Or can I have the quality of connection with people who are near and dear to me, where I feel seen and known and loved, and I feel a sense of belonging? Just wanted to name that, food for thought. So there's some portion where the audio breaks up a little bit, and that's when someone's speaking, but it felt important to keep that intact so that you could get the full experience and what that person shared. So just a heads up that closer to the end, the audio gets a little bit crackly, but you'll still be able to hear it. Yeah. All right, censored reality. I have a question around reclaiming the womb, reclaiming your yes, and reclaiming your no. Yeah, what's the question? I love the topic. I think it's juicy. And is your question how to do that? Let me know if that's what you're thinking. As you said that, like I could feel activation in my womb. I could feel my womb coming alive as you're like, using those words, reclaiming. I could feel it being like, yeah, like the fire, the fire coming up in it. Okay, yeah, someone's coming to. All right, I think I approved it, so let's see if that worked. Accept.
Is it working? Sorry, this is my first time doing something like this, and I thought it'd be easier to just come on instead of trying to type.
Yeah, I don't see
Um,
your camera. I know you're on, but I don't see your camera, and
yeah,
I wonder if I did
I
something.
turned off the
Okay,
camera, but
good for you.
I don't know like how I be looking right now.
Good for you. Good for you. Like, I support you creating the boundaries that help you to thrive in this moment. So, yes,
Yes,
let's do it.
yes. And so that question around resistance really hit me, and I've been trying to figure out how to word this question without activating anybody on the chat. And going back to reclaiming your womb,
Mm-hmm.
if you have had experiences where you had given birth, but you didn't give your yes to that.
Mm. Are you still there? All right. Can folks still hear me?
Sorry, I
Okay,
don't know
you're
what
back.
happened there. It just totally me out. And yeah, like I'm just having this mind blown moment of
Mm-hmm.
what does that process look like for reclaiming your womb, reclaiming your creative
Mm-hmm.
collection, reclaiming your identity,
Mm-hmm.
reclaiming your want
Mm-hmm.
and your yes
Mm-hmm.
and your no.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you were talking about allowing things to flow through you,
Mm-hmm.
again, it made me realize that if I have a history of my nose not being heard,
Mm-hmm.
how much like it's almost like gaining back that control of what is
Mm-hmm.
flowing through you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
even like when it comes to fear or certain energies are wanting you to do this,
Mm-hmm.
that you can say,
You can't say no. 100%. 100%. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I lost her again. Aw. A part of what I heard earlier is giving birth, and it sounded like it was like physical birth to a tiny human, but that not being within your yes. Let me know if that's accurate or if you're talking about birthing like a project or something else that wasn't in your yes. Both. Okay, good. That's helpful to know. So the question that I was going to ask as a follow-up is, what's the impact that has had on you? Because reclamation isn't this thing happened to me and I didn't want it to happen and I'm going to undo it. I think reclamation is, can I acknowledge what those impacts are? Can I acknowledge what the after is right now that I'm living, and how do I work through that, integrate that? How do I channel that into something that becomes a form of healing, into something that strengthens and supports my life and my beingness in the world? And I think a part of what I was hearing is that, and then you can correct me, but was there something around, I still don't feel as though I'm in my full agency? Was there something around, I still feel as though the things that I'm participating in, I'm not always a yes, or I'm not a full yes? So it feels as though where the question was ultimately going to is like, how do I stay in my agency and act from that place of yes, because my entire body is a yes? Okay, great. Okay, so correct. Awesome, awesome. Yay, really glad. So what I'm wondering is, what prevents you from being in your yes? Is it this fear that if I, being in your yes and your no, right? Being in your agency, is it this fear that if I say no to someone, I will lose their love, I will lose connection with them? Is it this fear that they will judge me or have some story about who I am if I don't do the thing that they're expecting me to do? So let me know if that feels true. And we can stay with the no for now, when the no becomes a yes, when the no is meant to be a no, but it becomes a yes. So let's stay with that one for now. Let me know if that felt true or what comes up for you, why that no becomes something else. Now wait until you get to type that. Thanks so much for having us, yeah, be with this with you. All right, so yes, that felt true. Just taking notes so I can reflect later. Okay, awesome. I love that. Okay. Um, yeah, so that feels like it could be a deeper conversation because, the relationships that we have with people are so, so precious that we sometimes deny our own needs in order to keep those relationships in a good place. And so it definitely requires like heart-centered, honest conversation to communicate to someone that this thing that you're wanting me to say yes to, I'm actually a no, and here are the reasons why I'm a no. And it could be that, yeah, there's like a lack of alignment there, right? Or it could be that something needs to be resolved or attended to before you get to a yes. So there is a risk that is involved in staying in our authentic selves. And usually the fear is that I will lose love. I might lose this relationship, this person who I feel so connected to, who really gets me. Like they want this other thing and I want this other thing. We're on two different islands right now. And maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I am not thinking about it the right way. And if I just follow them and do the thing that they want, then I will experience harmony with them and life will be good. And that story isn't true because your energy isn't a yes, right? And so, with you not being a yes, even with the energies combining to create the thing, it creates separation or disconnection in your system. And so, to come back to this place of I am going to live more authentically, it can be scary as shit. Because there is the risk of, do I lose those connections? Do I lose the relationships that I love? Do I lose a sense of harmony that's so important to me in these relationships and in my life? And so like it takes work to get to this place of I really want to have these honest conversations so that I can be in my yes, you can be in your yes, and we can be in our yes together. It doesn't mean that the agreement is going to be immediate. But what I've been learning is that these desires that live inside of us, it's like the most precious things that we have as humans, right? Like your yes, the things that are a yes for you, it's the most precious things that we hold inside of us as humans. And so if I can have someone have a taste of that thing and how precious it is to me, if that person can respect that and hold that with me, then we can stay in connection. And really, I don't want to call it a negotiation, but the thing that can be worked out in the middle is how are ways that we can both meet our needs that keeps us in connection. Or again, if something needs to be addressed before I can get to a yes, what are the strategies that we can use to address those things so that no one is sacrificing the other. No one person in that connection is sacrificing the need within them that is so, so precious. Let me know if that feels like it makes sense and it resonates for you. All right, I'm seeing some hearts. And then, okay, so glad it resonates. So let's shift to when the yes is there and the no is what's happening instead. And I'm assuming that it's something that wants to come through, and maybe there is fear, maybe there is resistance, maybe all of the things don't feel as though they're in alignment so that you can be in the flow of that full yes. So let me know if that's true or if it's some other things that causes the yes to become a no. And again, thank you for having us be with this with you, to engage in this with you. Overall fear and a fear of sabotage. Okay, fear or fear of sabotage. When you say fear of sabotage, do you mean that you are worried? Okay, not self-sabotage, but fear of sabotage overall. Okay, that someone else might sabotage it, that something will go wrong in the process, someone else might mess it up for you. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that. I'm really feeling that one. Ooh, I'm feeling how tender that one is. And what's landing with me is there's this like deep desire to create something out in the world, and also this fear of what someone else's behavior might do to that, right? Someone else who doesn't see this creation as being this precious, beautiful expression that you see to be, and how their blindness or how their own disconnection within themselves can cause, harm to the thing or destruction to the thing that you're wanting to bring into the world. So there's that tenderness that is landing within me. As I take it into my system, there's that tenderness that's coming up for me. So fear of sabotage, and what's coming up as potential pathways is what support do you need in that birthing process? And this is actually making me think of the physical birthing process and being in hospitals and how that can be scary for some people. And not that nurses and doctors are terrible, but the hospital is set up in a way that you're expected to give birth within a certain time frame. And many times the rooms are cold, they're like beeping things, there are all these things in the environment that actually make birthing more difficult. And because really, usually the staff is under resourced, or they don't have enough capacity to really be with you through the full birthing process. It means that they have less patience. It means that their expectation is that something has to happen more quickly. And the sabotage can show up because they don't allow for the natural flow of that birth, or they don't allow for the natural flow of whatever is moving through your body to move in the way that is authentic in that moment, because they've been taught that it should happen in a certain way within a certain time frame. And so sabotage can feel like a strong word in that context, but there are ways that they either force the process or restrict some parts of the process, such as like wanting to get up and walk around because they wanted to look a certain way. Not all hospitals, but definitely in most of the ones that I've been in and experienced. And the reason why I brought that up is who else is on your birthing team, right? So as this thing is wanting to flow through you, and I imagine that you're sharing it because it feels precious and important, who is supporting you through that process? The saboteur can show up, and it's, you know that it isn't you. The saboteur is like the external presence or person outside of you. And who's the crew that you have around you that supports you in that birthing, right? For me, I have people who are affirming me. Every single Friday, I have a call with a group of sisters who we're the sister squad, and we keep affirming and celebrating each other. And I am hype on a Friday. And if something weird is going on in the week that has my energy down, I know that Friday call happens every Friday. I know that I can call other people who are in my circle for a check-in and to be witnessed and to be seen. I know that as I am birthing, I am not doing it alone. I know that the people who I call to me, who I have surround me, are those who are supporting the highest vision of myself in the world, and I'm doing the same for those people who are in my circle. And so I think you need a crew. I think you need a crew of people who are affirming you so that birthing can feel more supported and it can feel safer. All right, I see that you've added something here. Yes, this really resonates. Been to a few bad hospitals, but past month, slowly, a circle of care I'm noticing is coming together. Ooh, so good to hear that. I love what you've called it, a circle of care. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, like we aren't meant to go through these experiences alone, right? We're not meant to go through life alone, because humans, we thrive on being able to relate to other humans. The way that we know ourselves is in relating to someone else and in the reflections that the people who we're in connection with share back to us. That's how we know ourselves. So that's how being in connection with other people, that's how important that is. And so as we're creating anything in the world, it's so important that we have the support in order to move through that creation. I have some cards by the Nat Ministry, Trisha Hersey, if you've heard of her. She's the author of Rest is Resistance, and I also have her cards called the Rest Deck. And one of my favorites is that we do nothing alone. Our entire life is a collaboration. And so that really is a reminder that if it's hard, if we're stuck, if we're not making progress, if it's not flowing, it could be a sign that we need support. Yeah, really revolutionary work. All right, let me know if that's helpful and supportive, or if there's anything else that's coming up for you. Or if there are any other questions. I'm seeing some hearts, or if there are any other questions that are coming up for folks. And while you think about that or share that, yeah, what I would like to say, I started earlier by saying I am a rebel, and maybe not intentionally. I don't know if my soul decided that it would be a rebel on this planet, but I think there are some values that are just really clear for me. And one of that is self-love and self-compassion, and self-love and self-compassion regardless of anything, right? Regardless of what's happening in the world, regardless of whether my life is checking the boxes on what society has told us is success, then I am going to be loving and kind to myself. And I want to see that for other people. I want to see that our lives within our being, that we don't become disconnected from ourselves, our authenticity, our truth, because of some story that this very oppressive system has told us that we need to become. So that's where the rebel shows up, because I'm like, nah, I'm going to be me, watch me be me. And I'm not doing it in the sense of watch me be me. I'm quietly being me, because this is who I am, and I resist. I resist the pressure to be some other version of myself that isn't true, that isn't authentic. Wanting to just name, that's why talking about these things is so important to me, because I want to see people having the ability to live their authentic selves, and having the awareness of what these stories are that keep us trapped, so that we get to choose. Am I choosing that story? Am I going to be with that story? Am I going to live into that story, knowing that it isn't mine? Or am I going to choose the story that's mine? Right? So you get to choose. All right. So that was very helpful. You just answered a question I have had for years. So much clarity. Thank you again, Nat. Yay! I'm so glad. Yay. Thank you all for joining. For those who will be listening to this at a later time, thank you for tuning in. Grateful for the hearts, grateful that you're here, grateful for your presence and your energy that helps to build what I was sharing today, because yeah, I definitely had my points, and your share and the comments and the questions definitely helped to build to that. So thank you for being a part of this birthing process. Thank you for being a part of this co-creation. I am wishing you just like all beauty and goodness in the rest of your day and week. And hopefully we'll be with each other next week, if it's not the rest day. Sending you hearts and love and lots of gratitude. Thank you all.
I had so much fun tuning back into that and going back to the energy of being with everyone. And as I'm here now, I'm appreciating that I get to share that experience with you, and that we get to expand on that in any ways that is wanting expansion in the world. And I hope it was meaningful for you. I hope that it connected with you in ways that allow for things to be unblocked, or ways that allow for more clarity to be a part of your experience. If you found today's episode meaningful and expansive in some way, then I definitely encourage you to share it with someone who you think might also find it valuable. I am looking forward to keeping in touch with you in all the ways that those align, whether it is staying in touch on Instagram, whether it's staying in touch over email. My email is hello@nataliefacey.com. Whether it's attending an upcoming workshop, whether it's doing one-to-one coaching and inner healing work together, in whatever ways that you're feeling called to connect or stay in touch, I welcome that. And I offer you love, I offer you gratitude, I send you just all this love that I feel bubbling up in my heart for this ability that I have to allow this work that I love so much to be expressed in the world. May the prayer continue, so that in whatever ways that this touches you, and in whatever ways that it wants to touch others, may that prayer continue. And if you're wanting to contribute to this work in any way, I have included a link to my PayPal where you can donate, so that, we get to expand this work and allow more and more people to receive and experience it, and allow for more and more people to experience healing and expansion in their lives and in the world. Okay, lots of love and blessings to you.